Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Gardner, certified financial planner, author, and founder of FinLit Tech. Thank you for joining us for season 3 of the eMoney podcast that makes sense. Today, folks, we are talking tech. Many of you may know that I am a big fan of financial literacy, financial technology, and the role that technology can play in helping to promote and bring more financial education and financial wellness to those across the country. Our mantra at FinLit Tech is to build a bridge between financial literacy and financial technology. That's why we've partnered with eMoney to bring more attention to this space. Now, personally, I think it's a relatively simple formula to achieve financial wellness. Financial literacy or education plus financial capability or tools and technology over time will provide or bring financial wellness. So today's episode, we have 2 leaders in the space for growing technology and developing technology to start the financial education process early. We're big advocates that starting the financial education process early over time will definitely help folks become better financial stewards of their money as they become adults. So our 2 guests today are Brandon Horn, who is head of partnerships with Greenlight, and Kevin Ruth, the founder of Finance 411. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having us, Matt.
Yep, sure. Glad to be here, Matt.
Wonderful, wonderful. Brandon, if you could take a few seconds, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about what's going on at Greenlight.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I run partnerships here. Greenlight, awesome company. So founded in 2014, launched our first product in 2017. We now serve over 3 million parents and kids, helping parents raise financially smart kids through the Greenlight debit card, the companion app, and financial literacy content kind of embedded throughout that process. Personally, my background's been in the fintech and banking space for the last decade. Prior to that, spent time in the U.S. Army. I know Kevin and I have being veterans in common.
Yep.
Oh, thank you both for your service.
Thank you.
Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself and Finance 411.
Sure. So as Brandon just said, we both spent some time in the Army. I think I was in a little bit before he was. I think I'm a little older, but I've pretty much got out of the Army and spent the last 25 years in financial services, really being responsible for financial planning and wealth management at firms like Merrill Lynch and UBS, and my last firm was Fidelity Investments. When I meet people for the first time and they say, well, who are you? What do you do? I always just say, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a financial planner. And that's kind of how I describe myself. And so financial planning has been core to everything I've done throughout my career over the last 25 years. And I decided to kind of take my knowledge of financial planning and apply it to financial literacy. And so 2 years ago, I left Fidelity Investments, started my own firm called Finance 411, and we created an app. It's a game you play, but there's also financial literacy lessons that go along with it that teach basic budgeting, saving, investing, and borrowing. And we've been up and running now for about 6 months.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Before we jump into the whole technical side, I want to take us a little personal stance first. Tell me a little bit about your experiences as kids. Brandon, you first. Growing up, did you talk about money as a child? Was it talked about in your household?
Yeah, it was interesting. So money was talked about all the time, but I think the interesting thing, it was always in generalities. Like we didn't have enough of it, or, you had to work hard and take really good care of your things. But as a result of it, I really kind of grew up with a lot of worry about money, but I didn't really have the tools or the strategy long-term to kind of change that outlook and to kind of build confidence. And I would say that, it was probably until I joined the military where I started to gain some of that. But yeah, it was always a topic of conversation, but never in the way that I think that we're here talking about it today.
Yeah. Kevin, what about you? What as a kid growing up, tell me a little bit about what that was like for you.
Yeah, so we never really talked about money directly. My family owned a service station. We owned a gas station in town. And so in the summers, my two brothers and I, that was our summer job. We pretty much would get up with my father early in the morning, go into the station and work there all day and then come home at night. And so we learned early on that we had to make money. And when we'd have like birthdays or other holidays where we'd receive money, I remember my mother always taking us to our bank, and we had those Passport savings accounts, if you remember those. I don't even know if they're around anymore. But I remember always depositing the money in the bank, and I'd always look at my balance and I'd be like, wow, there's more money in here than there was last time. Like, why is that? Like, it's like a magical place that we would come where somehow it would make more money than the last time I was there. And I really, at the time, of course, didn't understand what interest was, but I just knew if I kind of went to this magical place with this magical account, that it would make more money every single time I put money into it. But we never really did talk about it directly.
Yeah. And so I'm glad that everyone shared a little bit about their story about, money as a child. The Four Money Bears book that I wrote years ago really was written to address a lot of the things that folks talk about, parents and young kids talk about. They never really got that education. It wasn't taught to them in school. And so what I love about what you all are building is addressing some pretty sad numbers. And I want to share these numbers, and I have them written down here for everyone that's watching. So, according to a study in the US, only 34% of individuals can answer 4 or 5 questions correctly on a basic 5-question financial literacy quiz. That's talking 1/3 of adults. Moreover, eMoney did a study a few years back and found that people don't even like talking about money. In fact, the eMoney study found that half Americans avoid talking about their finances, and 63% have never met with a financial advisor. That's some stunning information and some shocking statistics right there. So we know that we need a lot more financial literacy, and we know that if we can start the conversation early, right, and give folks a fun and entertaining way to do it, we can do some neat things. So do you, Brandon, tell us a little bit about how Greenlight is doing what they're doing, and how we can address that big elephant in the room, which is talking about money.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start off, I actually bought your book before this and have been reading it with my daughter. She wanted to read it the last 3 nights in a row. So
I love it.
So that's super awesome.
You know that I own that book too.
I thank you both for your support of financial literacy and helping kids. Thank you all both. Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that made me happiest, my oldest is a 6-year-old, right? So pretty young, right? But that book resonated. And the thing that resonated with me is, like we often do reading to young kids, I was asking her questions as we were going through the book. And when I asked her what were the 4 kind of parts of kind of having good financial habits as a part of the Money Bears book, she immediately rattled off spending, saving, giving, and investing, which are kind of the 4 tenets inside of Greenlight that we use to teach about money as well. And then, holistically, we think of learning as the umbrella under which these kind of domains or subcomponents of being financially smart, healthy with money kind of reside. So one is just kind of providing the tactical tool, if you will, to go along with the educational content. We believe really strongly in learn by doing. And so having that physical card, having physical money with real world consequences, but the controls that parents can apply to those to give it a safe place to learn is really important. The other thing that I think we do really well, and I say this to folks a lot, is we force parents and kids to have conversations about money. Even at a young age, kids are on devices now. And so we use our companion app really as a communication tool back and forth between parents and kids. So if a kid wants to take a financial action, they're making a request to mom or dad that mom or dad gets on their phone. They can approve or deny. They can add pictures or emojis. It becomes a very interactive approach. And we do it really uniquely within the experience where kids can kind of unilaterally make decisions that are in their best financial decision. And then on the flip side, if they want to do something like move money out of savings, as an example, they have to make a request to mom or dad, and that forces that conversation. So we're really trying to create opportunities to have that conversation.
I will say, I too have Greenlight in my home. So I have a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And a couple Christmases ago, I'll tell you, Brandon, which is really neat, I saw an ad and it had these kids' pictures on a card. And I did some digging. I said, this is pretty cool. And that was the coolest thing. Kids opened up the gifts and had 2 cards in there and had the pictures on it. And we utilized it as a tool to help them do just as you say, a connectivity or connection with the child to understand spending habits and things that they do. So thank you all for the support, and we're supporting you too as well. Kevin, tell us a little bit about your side, man. Tell us a little bit about what your platform does and how it helps sort of change the future for kids.
Yeah, so one of the things I found when my 2 daughters are a lot older. They're actually, one's still in college and one graduated last year. But when they were in high school, I had a chance to see their financial literacy program that they were in. And we're one of the 21 states that say has a financial literacy requirement for high school. But I can tell you what my daughter's experience and what I saw was, they would have to take a 10-question multiple choice test on a Friday night, and they would just go and Google the question, get the answer. They do it right before dinner, and then they sit down for dinner and they'd be like, I'm done with my financial literacy. And so I would start asking them questions about it. And I realized that it was really having no impact on them at all, that they weren't really even memorizing, questions and answers. They were just getting through taking this multiple choice test. And so when I decided to really focus on financial literacy, I said, how can I make financial literacy fun? How can I actually make it so that it'll engage children in a way that would make it fun? It would make it that they also have to retain the information, because while they were having fun, they wanted to try to win the game. And so I created this board game. It's interesting that I created this game before the pandemic, and I actually had physical board games like Monopoly, and I would carry them into classes because I was testing them out in high schools. And the kids would have a fun time. They would play the game, and they exchange money, and the teacher or I would teach the lessons. But we're going to talk about technology. And one of the things that technology has done for me is really just change the entire way I'm actually delivering my program now. And when we get there, I'll talk about that. But really, technology to me has been the enabler that's making my program become what it is now. And I just never would have got there with the physical board games in the way I was doing it before the pandemic.
And then when you say the way you were doing, tell us a little bit about the game. Tell us a little bit about what makes it different.
Yeah, so the game hasn't changed much, although it's a lot faster when you play it on an app. But it's a game that actually teaches about budgeting. The 4 corners of the board, actually, you have to learn how to budget to get around the board, and then the spaces in between the budgeting are either assets or liabilities that we teach the students about. You have to give money to try to get money. And the whole goal is you start with a $20 net worth, and you build your net worth over time until the first player who gets a $100 net worth wins the game. And so every time a student plays the app, they go on these money journeys. And sometimes they use guaranteed savings accounts to kind of get to $100. Other times they use non-guaranteed accounts, or they may take out a loan to try to get to that $100. But they go on these money journeys. And because they have to budget at the corners, they're constantly budgeting in the game. Every single time it's their turn, they're constantly needing to budget. And so by playing the game and wanting to win, it just reinforces these basic financial planning or financial literacy concepts that then we tie back to the real world and show them how it actually works in the real world.
Oh, that's fascinating. It's fascinating. I've seen a bit of it, but I was really looking forward to having you on to get a little bit more detail on how that goes. Now, we've mentioned something here several times, and I know we only have a limited amount of time on this episode, and we could probably be here for hours once I ask this question. So financial literacy requirements in high schools, Kevin, you mentioned it, only 21 states require any sort of offering, and then even few actually require it to graduate. Why do you think it is that we don't have more financial literacy exposure for schools? Brandon, I'll pose it to you, and maybe you could put a few minutes on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to a lack of confidence in general. We're talking a lot about raising, confident kids, financially smart kids. Parents are a huge part of that. One of the reasons that we built Greenlight the way we built it is it's built for the entire family. So, one Greenlight subscription is for 2 parents and up to 5 kids. And we hear time and time again that parents are using Greenlight to learn as well. So some interesting stats that I wrote down on the Greenlight perspective. So 86% of kids are interested in investing, but nearly half don't have the confidence, or their parents don't know how to get them started. So one of the things that we did that was really unique around our investment product specifically was something called Learn Mode. So when you log into the quote screen, you get kind of in the language of a 13-year-old what every line on the quote screen means. So whether that's a market cap or a ticker symbol or a PE ratio or whatever the case is. And what we've heard from both parents and kids, but a lot from parents is, I used Greenlight to help do my own research. Um,
Nice.
and that was really telling. And so I think that what we see in our schools is a manifestation of that, where, there's through a consolidation of access, you have a consolidation of information and therefore a lack of confidence. And we're really trying to democratize that.
Yeah, I've heard a great line. It says, competence breeds confidence, right? The more competent that you are about any subject and anything, the more confident you are to either do it or teach it or share it. And I believe, and I say this all the time, that all we are in life is a collection of stories. And so if our parents if we're not getting those stories, and if you're not happen to be blessed or fortunate to live in a household that's a CFA or CFP or an accountant or something along those lines that deals with money on a regular basis, you're not going to get those stories, and you're not going to get that guidance. So, Kevin, what I know you have some great thoughts when it comes to this space. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts when it comes to schools and why schools don't offer?
Yeah, sure. So that we talk about the fact that there's 21 states that offer some type of financial education, and I think we have a map that we could put up and just show anywhere you see either a green solid or a green stripe is a state that offers some type of financial education. But when you really dig a little bit deeper, a lot of times they're talking about economics courses. And I just think sometimes when we think about personal finance and economics, we group them together. And I'm just not sure we should do that. Like, to me, that's like grouping together biology and chemistry. Yeah, they're both sciences, but really in an econ class, are you going to really learn about budgeting? Are you going to really understand about, investing and the difference between investing and speculating? You're going to learn about, macroeconomics and supply and demand, which are, very good topics to learn, but they're not going to help you with your personal finance. And so when you really strip back and say, well, who's teaching personal finance? Only the solid green states that you see there, and there's 6 of them. It's Utah, Iowa, Tennessee, Alabama, North Carolina, and Virginia are the only states that actually require a semester-long personal finance course. And I think that's one of the really things that we really need to do, is that the states need to mandate this. This needs to be something that is a requirement to graduate high school. I think similarly as we require students that have to get a driver's license, I think personal financial education should be a mandatory course that you have to take in high school. And the good news is Rhode Island last week just approved in their state to make it mandatory for high school students. So there's going to be a 7th state starting next year. But if you think about it, that's pretty sad, right? I mean, there's 43 states plus DC that do not require any type of personal finance in high school. It needs to be taught just like math and history and other topics are taught. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do. I'm trying to partner with financial services companies all over the United States to bring financial education into these high schools, especially in the states that don't have any.
We literally could be on this subject and on the soapbox for a while, gentlemen, because I'm really, really passionate about it. I'll throw my 2 cents in the ring. Everything that you said, Brandon and Kevin, I believe is very true. I'll take it a step further. There's been research done, I believe it was a Cambridge study, that shows that a child's connectivity with money starts by age 7. Right? So by age 7, a child understands what money does, how it interacts. And in fact, the first habit a child picks up is actually their parents' spending habits, right? So that's why I think having tools and maybe even having requirements earlier than high school could be beneficial. But the challenge that we've seen there when we've done our research here at Finlit Tech is you have teachers who want to teach it, but don't necessarily have the tools. And because they don't have the tools and they don't have that confidence, it's hard for them to be able to go out there and do it. So I believe everything that both of you all said. I think that if we could get the education maybe engaged a little earlier and provide these tools, I think it would be beneficial to our society as a whole. And again, good habits, develop into good behaviors and develop into good traits. So, all right, next question we have on here is something that I know both of you touched on a little bit, but I'd love for you to dig a little deeper, is the role of technology in democratizing financial education, bringing it to communities or areas that have been underserved. Just tell us a little bit, and our viewers and our listeners, a little bit about your thoughts and how you think technology can really be a game changer. Brandon, I'll jump to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about access and it's about reaching people where they are today, particularly kids. So, on the access side, I can remember going to the local branch and you have to have the social security card and a copy of a bill and birth certificate. And going through that process. And then it's really somewhat of a opaque exchange, right? You show up with some money, you hand it over the desk, you go away, you don't see it anymore until, like Kevin said, you go back and you're like, oh man, like that grew. That's pretty cool. We see that kids are logging in daily, especially if they're investing and checking where things are going. And so, we're reaching kids where they are by, one, going to their phones through the Greenlight app. The other piece that we're doing is, you mentioned giving teachers the tools. So we actually did a partnership with Kahoot, which has become a pretty pervasive teaching tool across the US, where we provide grade-specific content for grades 3 through 12 that teachers can use for free based on the Kahoot platform. The other thing that we've started to do is we've started to move into social as a way of teaching. So on some national surveys that we've run, we saw that about half of teens are learning about finances through social, despite the fact that social ranks as one of the lowest kind of credible sources or trustworthy sources to gain that information.
We're accurate.
So rather than try to take kids away from the places that they already are, we injected ourselves into it. So we do things like My Greenlight Challenge, where we have kids create content that we then kind of rate. We give prizes and bonuses for the most educational, the most creative, because kids are natural creators and are already on social media, but now we can vet that content to make sure that it's valid. So things like, what's the difference between credit versus debit? What's the difference between a needs versus a want, et cetera? The other thing that we do on social media is we highlight kid entrepreneurs. So we pick folks that are using Greenlight as a way to grow businesses, and we highlight them across our social media channels to try to introduce that as kind of a way to earn money to the other folks kind of perusing social media for financial topics.
I love that. Meeting people where they are. And I think that's how we're really going to be able to impact more people out there is by utilizing the tools and making them comfortable with it. Kevin, how about yourself? What kind of neat things are you all doing?
Yeah, and Brandon, I love that you guys are giving that stuff and getting it out there on the social media, because there's just so many people out there claiming to be financial experts. And when you actually listen to their TikToks or their social media site, the information they actually give out is actually wrong. It's not. So it's great hearing it come from a reliable source, which is terrific. So Matt, as I mentioned earlier, when I first started with this on my 2-year journey, I created a board game that I would take into schools and actually play the board game in a classroom. And the pandemic really made me pivot. And I was always going to do an app, but it made me pivot and just accelerated my my desire to actually roll out an app. And that's why I rolled out an app 6 months ago. But man, it was a game changer. Like, to me, the things I can do because of technology that I would have done with a board game. I have a leaderboard now, so people battle with each other because they want to be top on a leaderboard. Like, that just gets kids. I'm in 2 schools this week, and when the kids see their names on the leaderboard, I'll watch them playing at night. Like, they go home, they play at night, move up on the leaderboard, like something I never would have done with a physical board game. They have win-loss records. We have player styles. Now, when you're playing someone, are they a very aggressive player? Or are they a very conservative player? How are they playing the game? And the kids just love that stuff I would have never been able to do, again, with a physical board game. We can put customized logos into the game. So I can put a high school, like right now we have a high school that's in the game, and their logo's there. The kids love seeing their own high school logo in the game. Again, things I never would have been able to do but for technology. And with this now, because I'm able to make up videos, all my educational material went from being a paper-based kind of teaching in a classroom, kind of with a teacher with a lesson plan, to videos. They're animated videos that actually teach the lessons and engage the students. And so, again, all things that, because of technology, I think have made my program just a completely different experience than it was over a year ago. And I'm really thrilled that I was able to do that, leveraging technology.
The 2 things that I hear from both of you are connectivity and community, right? And that's what the technology that's available to us today allows us to do, is to connect people in ways that they probably never connected before, and then build that community of like-minded folks to help get them on this goal. And gamification, I'm hearing as well. I hear a lot of gamification attributes to some of these financial technology platforms is really, really helping get it out there. When folks don't think they're actually working, but they're actually playing a game, it's a lot easier to go through and do something and enjoy the journey that way. All right, we're getting towards the tail end, and we're talking about stories. Any sort of Any sort of insights, any sort of anecdotes or success stories, Brandon, that you're seeing over there at Greenlight that can maybe you can share with our viewers and our listeners when it comes to financial literacy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one that I'm just personally proud of is that to date we've had over $120 million saved on our platform with kids. So just super proud of that as a number. But to speak to the highlighting of kid entrepreneurs, like I think that's the coolest part. When I got out of the military, I started to get into the startup scene. Obviously, having been with Greenlight and watching that growth, I love to see kids that are getting out and kind of taking a little bit of risk early, right? And exploring what being your own boss could look like. And so I actually pulled a couple of lists. We've got a bunch of these, but Bryn is a 12-year-old entrepreneur. She used Greenlight to start her own face mask business during COVID-19. And then she donated 20% of her sales to charity. That's another thing that we see is just kids being overwhelmingly generous and philanthropic, which is really kind of nice to see. Steven, I remember this one specifically. He's a 13-year-old, and he actually published his own book series. So he saved money up through Greenlight and used that to publish his own book, which turned into a book series that he now has published. So super excited about that one. Aaliyah is a 14-year-old. She started her own baking business, and then she used Greenlight really as kind of her cash account. So she used it as her entire management. She was using her card to buy goods and so forth to actually make the cookies. She then takes the income from that business and splits it between kind of the spending, saving, giving portion of Greenlight. And there's just dozens other that are using Greenlight to really learn what it is to be an adult as a teenager, which is super cool.
Yeah. And I think the entrepreneurial aspect of that, when we look at different ways, we hear about stories of the wealth gap and trying to close that. Entrepreneurship is one of the ways that we can get that done. And if we can teach entrepreneurship to kids of color or kids in areas that have not have been serviced or served or overlooked, I think it could be a great tool. So those are some great stories. I like that. Kevin, what do you see on your side? What's some good anecdotes and stories?
Man, those are great stories. I love the entrepreneurship. Having worked in large companies for pretty much 25 years, this last 2 years being an entrepreneur, it is a lot of fun being an entrepreneur. And so I know, Mac, you've been doing it too. So I'm glad to hear those young students being an entrepreneur so early. Yeah, so for me, Mac, one of the things with the game that we play is there's one space called the pillars, and the pillars actually represents a loan, but the students don't know it's a loan. And so if you give $1, you get $10 right away that you can use on other spaces on the board, but then you have to pay back $5 every time you pass for the next 4 rounds. So you have to actually pay back $20. And so every kid, when we talk about that space, they said, why would I ever take $10 and give $20 back? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Who would ever do that? And it's a great conversation we have because it actually models a 30-year home mortgage. And so, you pretty much you buy your house, and after 30 years, you pretty much pay double for your house if you have a typical 30-year fixed mortgage. And so the kids are like, wait a minute, that's what loans are? It's like, yes. And it's at the time that they're thinking about college, right? And so now we get into the discussion around, okay, what were the 5 choices you were looking at for college? And are you even factoring in cost? And are you factoring in the fact that you might have to take student loans and what that could do to you from a career standpoint and how it could hamper your decisions down the road because you have these student loans that you have to pay back? And it just changes the whole conversation because, again, they learned it in a game, but they never really were thinking about the cost of college and the fact that they may have this debt and the real cost of that debt over time. And so I would say that that's been one of the real fun learnings as we've been watching these students get ready to go off to college, how it's changed their thought process about the cost of college.
Eye-opening experiences, looking at things from different perspectives. We need to provide young people different ways of looking at things, especially when it comes to money, because this is it's almost mind-blowing that this is an area, right, that you have to deal with. I heard a funny analogy, a funny story. I was talking to a gentleman, and he was talking about financial literacy. And he was talking to a colleague. He said, you know what? I had to take swimming lessons in school to make sure that I didn't drown. If I want to not drown, I just have to avoid water. That's simple. But if I need to deal with my personal finances, I can't avoid that. I need to deal with that on a daily basis. So why aren't there things in school that teach me about this stuff? So I love the stories of entrepreneurship. I love the stories of sharing different perspectives. I think that's great. We're coming on towards the end. We got a speed round now. We're doing speed round for season 3. All right. We got to have 3 questions. I'm going to hit you with them, and then you hit me with the first question, first answer that comes to mind. All right, Brandon, you're up. What's the one thing you wish you knew about money sooner?
The power of calculated risk. You got to take a little risk if you're going to have outsized returns.
Great. Like that. What's one hope you have for the financial services / fintech industry?
It's enabling access, hands down. It is all about reaching everyone, period.
Gotcha. All right, fill in the blank. Financial wellness is?
Having the confidence to manage your money and not have your money manage you.
Strong. I like that. Kevin, you're up. What's one thing you wish you knew about money sooner?
I would say the power of compound interest. As I mentioned, going to the bank with my mother, I really wish I understood compound interest and started saving when I was much more younger, because the power of it. I think Albert Einstein said it's the 8th wonder of the world, and I do believe it is.
Yeah. All right. What's one hope you have for the financial services fintech industry?
Yeah, so I hope that we take up this cause that we can deliver financial education into high schools. We can do this. We don't have to wait for the states or for the schools to pick up this. We could do this on our own. We have the knowledge. We have, Mac, you and I are CFPs. We know how to do this stuff already, right? We understand basic budgeting, investing, saving. If the financial services industry decided to make this their priority, we could be in every single high school in America, and we can start addressing this issue.
Amen to that. All right, fill in the blank. Financial wellness is?
To me, financial wellness is peace of mind. It's being able to put your head on the pillow at night and not be worrying about the things around money. And I think it's a lot to do with financial education, because once you're smart about this, it takes away your worry. I think it's about having a good financial plan, Mac. I mean, you got to have a good financial plan. And then I think you got to worry about your mental and physical health. And I think all those things come together, I think, gives you financial wellness.
Yes, and I agree with you 1,000% on that. The financial wellness, I think it's a journey that we all have to take, and the more education that we can have, again, that formula, financial literacy, education plus financial capability, tools, what will eventually lead to financial wellness. So I would like to thank our guest, Brandon Horn, Head of Partnerships at Greenlight, and Kevin Ruth, founder of Finance 411. You both have been wonderful guests, shared some amazing insights as to what's going on when it comes to building technology and improving financial literacy for our young folks out there. As I said, it is a long journey, right? And the journey continues. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right.